this is Preeti. I am so glad you can join me today. Today we're going to do some faux watercoloring using this Winter Bouquet layering stamp set. And the products we're going to use is the Winter Bouquet layering stamp set, some watercolor cardstock, some watercolor brush. You'll need a spritzer. I'm using these Arteza brush markers for this particular project, and I'm starting off by ripping the edges of the watercolor cardstock, and this is just to add some additional design element to the card itself. So what we're going to do is, before I can start, I want to create a background color. So I'm just taking this darker blue pen and I'm just laying it right on the top edge of the cardstock, and I'm using the watercolor brush to just pull down the color so that it fades away to the bottom to nothing. The reason I'm doing faux watercoloring today is because I am not a watercolorist, but layering stamps work beautifully to create that faux watercoloring effect, and I wanted to show you how easy it is. So I'm just taking this brown pen and I'm drawing in a branch coming from the left side. Keep your hand very loose and let the pen move deliberately, and you will create those ridges on your branches very easily. So now I've taken the pine cone layering set from this Winter Bouquet, and I've mounted it on some acrylic blocks, and I've taken a brown pen and just scribbled over it like ink to stamp technique, and just scribbled it over and then spritzed it with water and then stamped it. Now I'm taking the second layer of that stamp and I'm going to again do the same thing. Take a little darker shade of brown, spritz it with water and then stamp it. And between every layer you would want to heat set it and sop up any extra water that would have collected, and then continue adding those layers as you would do if you were to stamp them using any ink pad layering ink that you would have. And all I'm doing is I'm inking it with the brush markers and I'm spritzing it with water. So when you spritz it with water, it creates that water coloring effect rather than just stamping. Stamping would also look beautiful, but stamping would almost look very crisp. But when you add water, it kind of gives as if you have really hand done the watercoloring. After I've added all the layers, I wanted a bit more of deepness or darkness to it. So I just took the darkest of the brown brush markers, and layered it where I think would be the ridges of the pine cone. Now because we have done the stamping already, we do know where exactly they would be, so it was easy to just follow that through and just layer it. And then I'm just taking a watercolor brush and just going over that ink so it doesn't look like it's a harsh drawn line that you really used your watercolor to watercolor it. Isn't that amazing? I mean, I just was so happy with the way this turned out. Anyway, now let's do some pine branches. So I've again done the same thing. I've taken the layers of the pine branch. The pine branches have 3 layers, but I'm just sticking with just 2. So I am again coloring it with the ink, with the watercolor brush pens, and then I'm spritzing it with water and then applying it. Now, the more water you add, the looser the image will look. The lesser water you add, the crisper the image will look. So it all depends upon how you really want the watercolor effect to be. Now, because I added a lot more water than needed, my image is quite loose. You can see I have lost quite a bit of the defined lines of the stamp itself. So it's very easy to fix that too. So all I'm doing is I'm taking another green marker and I'm just laying a line in between and just flicking out some lines to give that pine leaf effect. So there's a base of green and then there's a little bit of detailing of that pine leaf. So you can do what you are comfortable with. If you are comfortable with freehand drawing, I am not, but this is kind of easy to do. So just kind of adding few flick lines makes it very easy for me to do this. So anyway, as I said, the more water you add, the looser the image is going to look, and the less water you add, the definite the image is going to look. And it all depends upon what kind of look you are going for. And you can see here I'm just adding some flick lines and creating those pine leaves. I've gone ahead and stamped additional pine leaves in different, are they called leaves or branches? I'm not quite sure. The brown thing that I laid is a branch, I suppose, and these are pine leaves. Let me know in the comment box what they're called. Anyway, so I'm just adding a few more in different spots, and you can see how beautiful that looks. And I'm going to go ahead and do some berries. Again, I've mounted the berries on my stamp pad, on my stamp block, and then I'm starting off with a really light pink color for the base of the berry cluster, and then I'm going with the darker pink. It's almost red, and I'm just going to go over that after it's, again, as I said, I heat set. Of course, I haven't shown you, but I am heat setting each time after I lay these pens, and I'm just doing the second berry cluster that I did at the bottom. Now, if there's not much water, then you don't have to heat set. Like right here, I'm adding very little water for these berries, so I didn't require to heat set it. So it depends upon how much water you add in order to heat set. And the only reason you're heat setting it, so that makes it easier for you to stamp the second layer on it. If you had water on it, the layers would not look very definite, and that's the only reason. And here I'm taking the last layer of this stamp set, and I'm stamping that. And when I stamped it, I realized that I did not line it up very like I didn't line it up well. So wherever there's an open dot left, all I did is I created a berry around it, just using the same pen. So you can see here I'm just taking the lighter pink and creating a semicircle. Then I'm adding a little bit of depth with darker color, and then with the darker shade some shadow. And then again I'm going to take my watercolor brush pen, and I'm just going to smooth it out so it looks like we watercolored it with water, and then I'm just laying a brown color in between to add some branches and some stalk in between those berries. And it is so simple, and literally it took me very little time, but the effect was amazing. I'm just doing the same thing with my branches too. The beginning of the branch, I just had colored it. I did not go over it with watercolor, so I'm just doing that. Now I'm just flicking some water over this image, and what that did is it repelled the water and created white spots on my image. I just had some extra watercolor paint in places where I didn't want, so I'm just brushing it off with water and sopping it with the tissue paper, and that should take care of it. Here I'm taking some white gouache, and I'm just going to start laying this over the painted image, and this is to create snow. And snow collects in places where there would be indentations in the elements. So like in the pine cones, it would be in those crevices of the pine cone. So you may want to add the snow, and on the pine leaves, it would be on top of the pine leaves. So I'm just adding some gouache all over the surfaces. Now, if you don't have a white gouache, you can definitely use a white gel pen to do this too. White gel pen, of course, it's going to take you a little longer, but it works perfectly fine. And I'm also laying some snow over the branches. Now, when you're laying snow over the branches, make sure you're not covering up the brown branch itself, but you're laying it right above the branch so it looks like the snow is sitting on the branch. Then I added some water to the gouache, and I used this splatter brush, which is just a fan brush, and I'm just going to splatter more of that white paint all over the surface so it looks like it's a snowy wintry day. Oh my, it looks so beautiful, people. I mean, it Really, it's not doing justice on this camera, but I tell you, it is. I was in love with this project. I created another one earlier before I started this video, and I'll show you. Now I'm just taking some glue pen and I'm adding wherever that snow is. So I'm using a lot of glue. So I'm literally flowing the glue and I'm adding it on the surface. And then I am going to take this glitter. This is a dry glitter. You can use any glitter you like. And I'm just going to add it over the places where the glue, I have added glue. And then when it dried, it had this beautiful, shiny, velvety, like touch or feel to this card, and it had such a nice, I mean, it had a watercolor feel, it had a vintagey feel. I was loving it. Now it was time to add some sentiment. I like to place my sentiment just like how I'm showing you, to see which sentiment would work well in order to in this particular project. So I'm taking this Merry Christmas sentiment stamp set, and I've chosen this Merry Christmas, and I'm stamping it with some black black ink, and I had to do it a few times because it's a watercolor cardstock and there's texture on it, so I needed it to stamp a few times. When I went to lay this over the note card, I realized it was a little larger, so I just ripped the other edge just so that it fits into my note card. And then I'm just going to add a ton of you can see that foam tape, just because it is watercolored and I don't want the panel to look wonky, and to make it stable I needed to do that. Anyway, and that pretty much completed that card, and here's the one that I had created earlier with a little different color tone. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.